Hello and welcome to Mental Health in the Time of Pandemic, another one in a series of digital programs being presented by IWF and drawing upon the tremendous resources within this organization to talk to women who are shaping our present and shaping our future. I'm Jean Meserve. I'm a journalist, and some of you may know me because I've been working with IWF for about 6 years. Before we go any further, let me talk about this topic. I don't have to tell you we're in the middle of a global public health crisis. We're in the middle of a global economic crisis. Those two things are introducing stressors that many of us may not have dealt with before, and it is creating a third crisis, a mental health crisis. Today, we're going to talk about what we can do to help ourselves manage this, to help our friends, to help our family, and to help our communities get through us. We have reached deep into the IWF family to find some women who are truly expert in the field. Let me read of them right now. First, we have with us Dr. Patricia Elder. She is a leader in developing mental health services in the Greater Caribbean. She makes frequent media appearances to discuss mental health and is the founder of Elder Associates Limited, which provides comprehensive psychological services. She is a member of IWF Trinidad, Tobago. Dr. Dorianne Cara Weil is also with us. She's a clinical psychologist and organizational psychologist with over 25 years of experience. She's a winner of numerous professional awards and also makes a lot of media appearances as well. She is a member of IWF South Africa. Welcome, great to have you here. And third, we have Dr. Dominique Lanctôt. She is a psychologist in private practice and a co-founder of alfapsi.ca, a psychology and wellness center that's located in Montreal, Canada. She specializes in helping people with cancer manage their emotions in addition to her other work. She's also author of a book. The book's entitled You're Not Alone, which seems like a very appropriate title for us to be talking about here today. Thank you to the three of you for joining us here today for this town hall discussion. I want to start out by asking each of you, because you are practicing psychologists, what each of you are seeing in your countries and in your communities. Dominique, why don't we start with you? What are you seeing in Montreal?
In Montreal, most people have seen their level of stress increase, and everybody is trying to adapt to this new situation, and not everybody has the same knowledge of how to self-care, self-monitor, and how to accept the uncertainty that comes with this pandemic. But one thing for sure is that there is in my clientele and the people I treat, my patients, people who have already anxiety and are a little more at risk right now of having more anxiety, because this pandemic is just making these symptoms, reappear more strongly. But so there is an increase definitely of psychological normal reactions, but difficult reactions, a lot of fear and a lot of sadness. But I see this also more for the healthcare workers who are on the front. They have,
and we're going to talk a lot more about them in particular, because I think that's a real area everybody wants to talk about, given from the chat that's already come in. Dorianne, let me jump to you and ask about South Africa. Are you seeing increases in depression, for instance, amongst your clients and amongst the population?
Absolutely, but I think it's very important to differentiate the reactions that we are seeing to a very traumatic and unprecedented situation. So if you were not seeing an increase in fear or in anxiety or in sadness, stimulated by the whole uncertain environment, it would be, it's a normal kind of reaction to a hugely traumatic situation. But having said that, and agreeing with Dominique, people who had a predisposition or were dealing with anxiety before, that anxiety has been accelerated. In fact, the whole pandemic, most especially as distancing and isolation, has acted as an incubator to accelerate possible challenges and symptoms that were there before, individually and also in terms of relationship. So if there were relationship difficulty, they're being manifest. Whatever there was before is being accelerated and incubated. So yes, we are, and sometimes those symptoms are really going over the edge where we can begin to call them clinical depression or an anxiety disorder beyond the expected reaction to what we are going through, all going through as a result of this.
Pat, talking earlier, you were saying there have not actually been that many cases of COVID in Trinidad and Tobago, but the economic impact has really been devastating. Talk to me about the mental health implications of that, if you would.
Well, I agree with our sisters about what they have said, but my view is that what COVID has done is create a spotlight on all of us, on how we are functioning or not functioning optimally as human beings and as women in the workplace, as in whatever role we are in our particular communities. So it's really a wake-up call for all of us that there are gaps in the way that we live, in the way that we think, in the way that we manage our lives. One of the major issues for us here, and I am going to speak for the Caribbean a little bit, is that we have a history of traumatic events, if you will, historically going way back when the Europeans first came to the islands and brought with them incidences to which we were not immune, such as smallpox and so on. And the Caribbean is rife with stories and experiences of traumatic events, natural and man-made, and some political. So in a way, we are accustomed to trauma, but this COVID is something really, really out of the world different. And it's created a spotlight on our gaps in not only our own personal development and coping, but also the gaps in the services and the caring of the vulnerable in our society. So there's a lot of work to do, and we have to thank COVID for that. Financially, of course, that's a big issue because many of the Caribbean islands are tourist-based in terms of their economy. And cruise ships are not allowed in, and hotels have closed, and so the employees in these entities are vulnerable anyhow, and now financially that's an added distress. Yeah.
Dominique, you mentioned the healthcare workers and their mental health situation. Talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in that population and what you're seeing in the children of healthcare workers who must just be carrying a tremendous burden.
That's an excellent question, Jean. Healthcare workers put their life in the front. And even before the pandemic, they have a higher level of stress, than in the majority of people because of their work, because of the compassion that they put into their work and everything. So healthcare workers right now have in Canada, there's a rise of, I think it's 15% more, distress, emotional fatigue, vicarious trauma, all these things. So one thing for sure is that their life is very difficult and we need them. So right now, I see that psychologists, psychiatrists, the whole community is much more aware of the health workers. And there's a lot of new platforms that are coming, like support groups, new interventions for them. So I feel that we're recognizing now the burden, and they are our angels right now. And we need to respect them tremendously and let them know that they are human beings. They try to do their best. They don't have to be perfect all the time. They have to self-care. If they don't self-care, if they don't go home and get enough sleep, spend a bit of time, quality time with their family, eat well, self-monitor their cognitive and emotional state level. And if they're not well, they can reach and get some support by psychologists in the hospital. But it's very important that they take care of themselves, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not able to take care of others. And if you have a nervous breakdown, it won't help either. So I think there's a great focus right now on helping our healthcare workers, but there should be more help for them.
Dorianne, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, because I have been working with some frontline healthcare workers, and there's some real differences this time in the way they're talking about this crisis as opposed to any other. In fact, 2 of them were involved in 9/11. And as traumatic as that was, the differences that they're highlighting are, number one, they began to know very quickly what they were dealing with. So there was a certainty and an end. There were a number of people, this is what happened, and there was an end to it. So one of the things that is really challenging for all of us, them in particular, is the ongoing nature of it and the degree of uncertainty. Then there are other things that they are highlighting. First of all, I have just been so overwhelmed by their commitment and their purpose. There is no alternative for them. They don't ever talk about staying at home. But what they do talk about is the fear they see in each other's eyes when they walk through the doors of the hospital and look at each other, because they know they're experiencing the thing together. And also one of the differences is this time you can get sick. And it's a big difference. There is that kind of challenge of that. In addition, Dominique spoke about being sustained by the hug of your child, by the interaction of your family and the support. Now, many of these people are not at home. They're in isolation. So they're not going home and they're not getting that filling up quality in terms of the support. And the very last thing I want to say about that is that some of them are talking about having to step in and act as families for the people who are dying or who are very sick because their families can't be around the bed. So they are holding the hands of those really vulnerable people, especially those who may not make it. So those are added specific challenges.
I'm very interested in the management of gender violence during lockdown and its mental health impact. Dominique, are we seeing it?
Yes, we are seeing it, definitely. First of all, even before the pandemic, we know that women are more at risk of, violence. It's a fact. And this has definitely increased that problem because in confinement, with no space and you cannot go out and seek help as much. And refuge for women, we have less right now. And less help because of all the measures of, confinements and the effects of the pandemic. So yes, there is a resurgence, but there's a big awareness of it right now. So I think we're all learning, the Minister of Health, the professionals, the women's shelters, everybody is very aware of that now. So actions are happening. There is more support. And so I want to be optimistic on that. But definitely, as we start to deconfine more progressively in a safe way, women will be able to go back to their shelters or support, see their psychologists, and get more help. So it's been a bit of a tragedy from that perspective, the violence, the abuse, and with the children as well, paying the price. Maybe Dorianne or Pat can also give their views on that.
Yes, I think Dorianne wanted to weigh in.
Just to say that, under these conditions of distancing and lockdown, there's kind of nowhere to go. And we know that generally it's very often difficult, especially in a patriarchal society, for men to express their frustration and certainly any feelings of vulnerability. Fear, sadness, whatever, they often won't even access that or feel it. So often it gets acted out instead of expressed and dealt with. And when the people who are locked in with you happen to be children or your partner, those are the people who kind of bear the brunt very much of it. So it's accelerating. They don't have their usual pacifiers in terms of going out, meeting with their friends, meeting at a bar, having a drink. And so all of this level is just accelerated and concentrated in the environment that they're living in. And hence, that's one of the reasons, not the only one, why there's such an increase.
Yeah.
Pat, I think you also had something you wanted to say on this subject.
Yes, please.
Go right ahead.
Yes, I wanted to add to the conversation about the women who are working from home and the multiplicity of roles that they must adopt at this point. And one of the issues that we're hearing about is the role confusion, because when we go out to work, it's pretty much, you know what you're supposed to do. But when you're working from home, not only is your employer expecting of you that you fulfill certain deliverables, regardless, but you have children at home, because in Trinidad, our schools are closed. So since women are still the primary caretakers, you not only have to fulfill the deliverables for your employer, but you also have to do at-home schooling with your children. You also have, if you have another family member in the home, like your mom or elderly aunt or whatever, it's still your responsibility to get her to the doctor, to make sure she has her medication, etc. So the multiplicity of roles that women who are working at home because of COVID is extraordinarily stressful for them. They have no escape. There's nowhere to go. And sometimes, because of the space in the home, they don't have space to call their own. They don't have a lovely little office that you and I can go to and lock the door and turn on the air condition, you know? So they don't have that space to call their own, that they can get their work done. And so they're pulled from pillar to post to satisfy a lot of different entities. And the other addition to this, where the violence, the partner distress comes in, is that their partner still expects to get that support and get the lunch on the table on time and take care of their needs and make sure that all those household duties are still taking place. So for the women who work at home, it is extraordinarily stressful for them. And sometimes it could bubble up into intimate partner violence, abusive language, and, you know, it could be quite dangerous at times. Yeah.
I want to jump in here with another audience question, which relates to this, but takes a contrary point of view. Cheryl says, I am in a very high stress position as top management of a global company, on the road, long hours, lots of business entertaining in town and globally. Working at home has me feeling calmer and more peaceful. I am sleeping better than ever and feel more grateful and happy. I have other executive friends who've told me the same. Why does no one ever talk about this group of people? Only the ones affected negatively.
Mm-hmm. Great question.
Great
Dorianne?
question.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it is a great question, and we are seeing that. I think that we've seen some of the benefits of working at home, plus other positive effects of it. You know, meaning is beginning to reveal itself. I think that it's not a general thing that we're saying thank you for this amazing learning opportunity that has come upon us now. You know, we're too focused on some of the other stuff, but there is definitely that. And we hope that those new kind of learnings and experiences will continue beyond COVID. Who says that you can't be more flexible with work at home? Why we don't talk about it as much, I think, is particularly interesting. There's almost a kind of an undefined and a bit of a paradoxical guilt for saying that I'm coping well and for saying that I'm actually even enjoying this lockdown, when you know that there are so many people around you who not. And we need to talk about this whole thing, about the range of experiences of it, and competitive suffering. You know, it's like saying eat your dinner because there's starving children in India. The one doesn't really affect the other. And you're absolutely entitled to own and learn from your experience and share your experience. One of the difficulties is sharing that positive experience with people who can't remotely relate to you. But we know that. And we would relate to people who are reaching out to us from the position that they in more than the position that we in. But there are lots of them. I think you would resonate with with the question and the comment that is being put forward.
Mm-hmm.
And we're learning a lot. Some of it very
Yes,
we have another question here. I'd love to work in some more of the audience questions. Let me go to one from Jeanette Cowley. Can you talk about the stress of people being asked to return to work when they feel unsure about their safety and nervous about the readiness of the infrastructure to keep them safe? Certainly something we're seeing in the United States now as we're opening. How about in your countries?
Yes, we have heard from some of our clients that they're absolutely afraid to go back out because they're not sure. In terms of the testing that we have been doing in Trinidad, it's not as robust as maybe the US or some of the other countries. So we're not 100% sure that everybody is safe or the majority of folks are safe. Because we keep hearing that any one of us could be a carrier of the COVID. So safety is an issue, but it's interesting because on the other side, we hear employees wanting to go out to work because work is like the work environment is like a safe place for them. It's a place where they get their emotional and self-esteem needs met, and they feel really empowered there. So it's really interesting what COVID has done with us in that on one side we may be afraid to go back out. On the other side, we can't wait to go back out so that we could get our self-esteem needs met and reconnect with our colleagues, because that's a very important thing for us ladies also, to reconnect professionally with our colleagues in the workspaces. Yeah.
A number of our questioners are asking about how they can help other people. Let me throw out some of these. Anne asks, how can we support others, particularly those who are alone and lonely? What can we do? Dominique, do you want to take that?
Sure. There are so many things we can do. First of all, we have the phone. We can call them. We can support them. We can make sure that we inquire about their wellness being. If they need to have some groceries done, we can have a support system. So the lonely people are the one that really needs to be in contact. And although it's not physical, there are many ways, to share some laughing, some good music, some humor. So I think people who want to volunteer and put their names as a volunteer for organization to help lonely people, there is a need there, and it makes a huge difference in the life of people.
I'm curious about the absence of touch. People can't hug somebody. They can't grab their hand. A phone call is great. Zoom can be even better, but that absence of touch, how much of a factor is that in creating that sense of isolation?
One of the things you could do is get a pet. Pet therapy.
And a lot of people have done that. There's huge surge in adoptions.
I know. Yes. So, it's a dangerous situation out there to, as far as the health folks are telling us. But maybe a pet would help. Yes.
Another question we have, how can one alleviate the extreme distress of people watching a family member dying from COVID, but they can't be with them? And how do they deal with the aftermath of the guilt they must feel? That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Dorianne, do you want to try?
Yeah, I just think, part of it is the reality of the situation, and we feel so much in our lives. To witness that kind of distress and helplessness and the feeling of helplessness ourselves is really difficult. We have a saying that kind of dominates a lot of us that says, don't just sit there, do something. And so when we can't do something and wave a magic wand, we underestimate the healing power of support and just being there. Being there as much as you can, showing up with a great deal of understanding and a great deal of empathy. Is as close as you spoke about missing the touch. You know, we all in some kind of sense of grief at the moment. We're grieving for the loss of the world that we knew. We're grieving for the loss of physical touch. We're grieving for routine and priority, or of that wonderful connection of being with a lot of people in a place of worship, or sitting around a table. There are lots of grief. And now this, not being there for your people is just, I think the first thing is to recognize how amazingly difficult it is. And what you can do, what you don't do, is to try and placate the person and to say things like, look, there's nothing that you can do. It's not, which is true. It's not really your fault, or in any way trying to minimize it. I think you lean into what they're going through, and to say that in addition to the loss of the person, you feeling so cut off and your wish to be there is so strong. And I wonder if they know that, and I think that possibly they believe they do, and maybe help them connect with phones or with social media or whatever. The healthcare professionals are aware of this and try and facilitate it. But the reality of the situation is that it's a really, really difficult one. And of course, the guilt is that you love and you do the best you can, even if you can't physically be there.
A related question from Michelle. Michelle asked, my 93-year-old mother has now been isolated at a senior's residence for over 2 months. She began a spiral a few weeks ago and shared that she's afraid of dying. What is your advice as to how to respond to a loved one who's experiencing this? Dominique, Pat?
Well, I think that unconditional love, compassion, just surround that person, letting that person know that how much she means to you, and you wish you could be closer, but you are in your own way, in a more spiritual way. I think people who are alone and dying alone, it's the journey that we will all face at some point, and there's not a clear answer to that, but just trust that you can share your love and you can make that person go peacefully. And after that, you also have to be at peace with yourself, knowing that you've done all the best you could. And so I will maybe ask Dorianne or Pat to add to this.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It is one of the most difficult things for a human being to go through, to witness the death of someone you love. There's no easy answer to that. So my response is always based on my belief that forever we are connected spiritually. So physically you may not be in my presence, but you're in my heart. And I would say that over and over again until you get tired hearing of it, because that's my belief, and that's what would help us through the period of loss. But it is extremely difficult to lose someone that you love and to watch them die. I mean, it's a helpless feeling, but you have to acknowledge that in yourself, acknowledge that what you have control over and what you don't, and believe in whatever faith system works for you. Because I do believe at times like those, it becomes a spiritual journey between you and your loved one. Yeah.
Dorianne?
Yeah, what I think, just to underscore that and even make it more real, take it a little bit further. The person lives in your heart forever. And they live in your heart and in your spirit by the way they have influenced you, by memories that you have, by what you've learned from them. And sometimes those kind of conversations are useful. You know, when I remember, Mom, do you remember that magic moment that we had, or that time that we had? That will live with me forever. Or these are the things that I've picked up from you and you have inspired me by. And they are the values that I'm passing on to my children, that I learned from being your daughter and from you being the kind of mom that you have been and that you are to me. So if you can be courageous enough to go there, maybe it's not easy, to really highlight that it's not just talk. There are memories and actions and experiences and influences that I am me partly because of who you are. And that's a continuation of it.
We are all being flooded with information about COVID and about the bad economy all the time. And Anna asked, can you give us ideas about how to protect ourselves from too much information, too much bad news? Turn it off, I guess. But how do you know when the moment comes that you should turn it off, when it's really harming you as opposed to helping you? Pat?
Yes. Facts get rid of fear, but too much facts gets you anxious. And what I always recommend is that you have a turn-off switch on your television. You have a turn-off switch on your phone and on your radio and everywhere else. That COVID news is everywhere. We are inundated with information. But it gets overwhelming and it frightens us. So when do you know when to shut off? When you've had enough, when you will feel it. You will feel the inside of your gut. You know what? This is too much for me. I don't need to know how many people died. I need to know how many people are alive, who have survived, and begin to switch how you perceive all of the statistics that have been thrown at us every single day. So I guess it's an individual decision you make as to how tolerant you are of all these facts that are, and sometimes not facts, that are floating around, because they can exacerbate your feelings of anxiety, and you don't want that.
A reminder to our audience, this is a town hall meeting. We really, really, really want your questions. You've sent some great ones. Once again, at the bottom of your screen, you see the words ask a question. Tap on that and you'll see a field in which you can enter your question. Pat had mentioned earlier that the mental health systems in Trinidad and Tobago and throughout the Caribbean really aren't equipped to deal with the massive numbers of people who are under stress right now. Patricia asks, in Mexico, the use of technology has been very helpful. Video calls between the sick person and family. Can you share opinions about this method in your countries? Are you doing telecounseling? Dominique, is this a great tool? And does it work for everybody?
Well, I'm very happy that we have this tool, because right now with confinement, it's fantastic to be able to do psychotherapy with our patients. And I would say in my practice, the majority are very happy that we can do it. Obviously, there is a screen between you and the other. So that's not ideal, because in psychotherapy, you want to be, together. You don't want a distance between the therapist and your patient. But honestly, the studies have been very positive about the results of cognitive behavior therapy, mindfulness approach, on using Zoom, using teleconference. For some problematic, like personality disorder, borderline personalities, because these people have relationship issues, it's better to be in person. And obviously, sometimes people who are in big crisis, you want to be in person. But it's also more tiring for the brain, I found, to be on your screen, for so many hours a day. But I would say that it's a great option that we have that technology. Imagine 50 years ago, if we had a pandemic and we're all staying home, we would not have been able to offer this kind of support. Are you hearing me, Jean?
Yes.
Yes. The other thing is now you have support platforms, webinars, so many ways to get help online. And for people in other countries and in regions in Canada, I think it's extraordinary that we have that. But it does not replace the human touch, like you were asking before. I'm a person who loves hugging, and so for me, I'm deprived from that. Not that I hug my patients, just to be clear, but just the physical interactions and all that. But I would say it's a positive, and I'm sure there's some my colleagues can also talk about it. There might be other negative points to it, but I see more positive at the moment.
Pat, I'm particularly curious about the poorest people who may not have connectivity and may not have access to this kind of therapy. What services are available for them? How are they helped? Or are they helped?
Yeah, so we have connectivity issues, and some people do not have access to the internet, etc. But what I wanted to add to the conversation is this whole issue about confidentiality. In our environment, the thing that we love to do most, apart from dancing and singing, etc., is talking about other people. So confidentiality, where psychologists' practice is concerned, is a critical issue. So when we engage a client or a patient with telephonic counseling, we have to ensure that they're in a safe place, that it's discreet, that it's confidential, etc. And there's certain podcasts and so on that we make available to our clients, Zoom and some other forms of technology are available. But the issue is always, is this a confidential experience for the person? At least in our environment, that is very important. Yes, and there are certain folks who do not have access to the telephonic counseling. And that's where what the government has been doing is they have decentralized, or they're decentralizing the mental health services, so that every clinic in the region and the health services system will have access to psychological services. So in that way, the folks don't have to travel great distances to get the help they need. But we love the telephonic counseling. It is really, really interesting and impactful, and clients call at all times, 24/7, and we get to provide the services that they need in real time. Yeah.
Dorianne, I have a question for you. This is a first in our lifetime kind of event. Do mental health professionals really understand the full implications of what people are going through psychologically right now, and do they know how to deal with them?
Sure. It's a very challenging and I think necessary question. And we can talk to our colleagues now. There's a degree of vulnerability and humility, I think, when it comes to a lot of things in this profession. We don't have all the answers. What do we know? What don't we know? But I somehow think that whatever generates any kind of mental illness, particularly with severe emotional responses, it often isn't the factor that generates it. It's the feelings and the manifestation of it. So all of us, besides the professionals, do know what grief is. We do know what extreme stress is, which we've had in other experiences of our life. We have experienced sadness and anxiety. And the first point of call of any mental health professional is to understand and connect with your client, which we can do through the vast array of other experiences that we've had. There are certain unique differences which are new to us as well. And that is, how do you maintain some kind of realistic or mindful optimism when there is so much uncertainty, and that as opposed to positivity? How can you motivate people and help people not to give up when they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel? And in some ways, you haven't got the answers either. And so that is really quite interesting. Positivity can sometimes be destructive. At the end of every email or at the end of every WhatsApp, your friends and family are going to say, okay, stay positive, stay positive. And what that sometimes means is deny the reality or don't get in touch with the feelings that you're experiencing right now. And that has destructive effects. If you don't own the story, you can't defy the ending. So you have to actually stand in it in order to come out of it, feel the vulnerability, and develop the courage to deal with it. But optimism is the possibility of seeing light at the end of the tunnel, however long and dark the tunnel is, that it's not always going to be like this. And I believe that at this time, you've got to connect with that spark that keeps people going no matter what.
So you talk about the long tunnel. Does the tunnel end when the health crisis is over? Or are we going to be seeing mental health effects from this crisis for a very, very, very long time? Dominique, thoughts?
It's not an easy question to answer because everybody's different. But we know that a lot of people have lost their jobs and they don't know what they're going back towards. I think that the uncertainty of the future for these people is a big, big consideration. But it's difficult, human being, we have resilience in us. People have experienced wars in the past. It's in our brain. Every human being is stronger than they think they are when they are put in hot water. And now we're all discovering our own inner strength. So knowing that we're going through this pandemic, we might have an end to it in 2 or 3 years, but other things will come at us. It's like you have to surf the waves, and whatever waves are coming in your direction, you have to be in charge of your boat and do your best and learn from the experience. But I think for me and for most of the people I work with, and from also, research has shown that people, reinvent themselves. And when we have this pandemic, we will now know that we will live with a new risk, and we'll all have to go back in our life accepting that there is uncertainty, but we can still be happy and we can still create new ways of communicating. We can make the world a better place. The good things that have happened right now is the reduced pollution in the world. People have been more together in family. They have played cards. They have spent more time talking to each other. And also the inequality, the injustices, the financial discrepancies between wealthy and poor people and ethnics and all that. Now we know that we're all in this together. COVID-19 does not discriminate whether, it affects everybody. So it's an opportunity to make maybe this world a more resilient world we could have a collective growth in that, to tolerate what's going to come and be prepared for it. And so I think there is a positivity in what's happening to the world, although we don't like it. I do agree we don't like it.
What about the question of stigma? There has historically been a stigma associated with mental health issues. Now that more of us are under stress and living this, is one possible outcome of this that the stigma around mental health is reduced or eliminated? Thoughts on that, Pat?
Yeah, I think that this is a fabulous opportunity for all mental health professionals to recognize that we now can reintroduce or introduce ourselves into people's lives as a servant, as a helper, and a resource for supports that they may not have heard of before, because they thought psychologists have horns and, long beards and all of that stuff. So what in our communities, what we've been recognizing is that we get the opportunity to go out into the community and introduce ourselves as helpers. Yes, we are psychologists. Yes, we have PhDs, MAs, or whatever. But first of all, we're human beings. And I love what Dorianne said, that we can empathize with folks who are in pain. All of us on this screen understand what pain is. That's my assumption, ladies. So we can empathize. And once we make that connection with folks who are in pain and suffering and who are at risk, they will say, wait a minute, but you're a psychologist. Yes, I'm human being first, and I understand what you're going through. The other option, the other approach that we use is to recognize that in our communities, we must use a multi-systems approach to helping folks. We don't have the answers. I don't have the answers, and I keep telling people the older I get, the less I know, So helping folks to recognize the supports that they have, not only the individual resilience, but also the fact that they come from a community that can be supportive of them. And it doesn't just have to be blood relatives. It could be their church. It could be their mosque. It could be their community groups that they belong to, and of course social services and whatever the government has in place. So I think as psychologists, this is a fabulous opportunity for us to connect or reconnect with our communities and to help folks see that we can be a resource for them. And the stigma of seeking help is really a waste of time. You really are not helping yourself by having those kinds of views, but it's our behavior, our reaching out that would decrease the stigma. And one more thing I want to add, as an employee assistance program provider, that is a fabulous opportunity to reach people who would heretofore would not dream of going into a psychologist's office and sitting on the sofa and answering the question, how do you feel? So we could go to the workspace, introduce ourselves as a resource, as a helper, and provide psychoeducational opportunities, and apart from the counseling and critical incidents if there's a traumatic event. So we are introducing ourselves, educating the population about the resource that is available to them. And thus, I think by our behavior, we can decrease some of the stigma about help-seeking behavior. That's
Dorianne,
what I think.
did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I just
Yes.
would like to say something, because I feel that coming from South Africa, there is a lot of differentiation. While it's absolutely true that the virus doesn't discriminate, this idea that we're all in the same boat is actually really not true here. We are in the same storm. We definitely in the same storm, but we're in lots of different boats. There are some people who are living on ocean liners at the moment. There are other people who are on broken rafts. who are not knowing, where their next meal is coming from. So when we speak about this whole pandemic, it highlights and it magnifies some of the ills, not only our own personal challenges and deficits and relationship issues, but it also has extremely highlighted some of the psychosocial issues that are going to have to be addressed going forward. And so while we're in it together, in one way, I think that we're in it together particularly because of common vulnerability, because there's no one who really knows what is in it. And vulnerability, that kind of vulnerability is important for authentic connection and for creativity and for innovation and all the things that we are going to have to draw on now. That's collective. But there's a lot of societal and social division in it as well.
A lot of our IWF members are asking questions about how to help themselves, how to keep themselves healthy. I'd love for each of you to offer some tools. Dominique, I know that you in particular do a lot of work around wellness. Give us your suggestions on what we all should be doing to keep ourselves in a better place.
Well, the main tips that most...
Dominique, did you hear me?
Yes, I heard you very well. Are you hearing me? Hello, hello? Are you hearing me?
Okay, you're cutting in on me a little bit. Now I am. Talk away.
Okay, the main tips that psychologists are giving to people is they have to be, first of all, they have to take care of themselves. I've said it before. They have to exercise, eat well, try to sleep well also. They have to use whatever means that will distract them and give them some moments of lightness when they hear all these bad news. So we're saying also not to watch the news too often, just enough that you know what's happening. Also, laughing, music, all this is good. But for myself and for many people now, I found that meditation, yoga, relaxation, body experiences are very good because you are a body and a mind, you are all. And if you relax your body, your brain relax. So I really suggest to people to try Tai Chi, whatever works for them. But meditation, I did my PhD, my research on mindfulness for cancer patients. And being myself twice a breast cancer survivor, I've used a lot this approach for myself and with my patients. And I found that when you rest your brain, when you have a moment, every day where you can really focus on your breathing, and when your thoughts are coming, you just observe them and let them go, and you refocus on your breathing. Even 2-3 minutes, a couple of times ago, is a moment where you go inside. You are in a space of equanimity, and that rests your body, rests your soul, rests your mind. And then you go about your day and you feel better. You feel, I'll give an example, like a computer that is overheated, you'll shut it down, it'll rest, and then you open it and it works better. The brain is like that. You have to make sure that you rest your brain and to energize it after. So I found meditation a very powerful tool. It's not for everybody. Some people may, they need to go for a jog, and it's fine. Jogging is a form of meditation in movement. So I would strongly tell people to use whatever, gives them a little break from the pandemic, where they don't think about it and they're just in the moment, and then enjoy smell the flowers, listen to the sound of the birds, and so for now, that would be my suggestions.
Okay, Pat, how about you? Do you have some additional suggestions for people to keep themselves in the right frame of mind?
For me, it's music, our local music, which is called soca. which is extremely rhythmic and has the sound of percussion in the background, the steel band, of course, and the iron, hitting the iron. And it resonates very beautifully with your body. So Dominique, I would recommend some soca music to dance to. And it takes you somewhere else where you don't have to think about COVID anymore. And interestingly, in what I've been watching on the television is some celebrities have gotten together and created music about COVID. But if you don't listen to the words, you wouldn't know that it's about this dreadful disease. You know, it's very uplifting and a good beat and to dance to. So, you know, music is healing. We know that. Nature is healing. Gardening. Some of my friends tell me they now have a kitchen garden. Whoa, you know. Hiking and, well, we're not allowed to go to the beaches yet because we're on lockdown. But once we released, you know, the sea is wonderful. The sea is a wonderful, watching the waves and so on. So Mother Nature is healing wherever you could find it. Yes.
Dorianne, I'm curious, your advice, not just perhaps for ourselves, but broaden it out a little bit. What can we do for our families, particularly maybe children, and other things we can do for our community that will help collectively with mental health?
Sure. But before that, I want to say one word about ourselves, because I think that there's a condition that is pervasive amongst women, which we're seeing manifested now, and that is giving yourself permission to do some of these lovely things that important things that we've been hearing about. It's to do with not enough of a sense of personal entitlement, and it's to do with women being nurturers and caregivers. So your question about looking after everyone else is not really unfamiliar, but to be able to say, I need help. Please, will you help me? I'm not coping too well with this. You know, there are two parents in this relationship, not only one. When you're so used to functioning in terms of good, bad, right, wrong, should, shouldn't, mustn't, to say, what are my needs and what am I hungry for first? I'm hungry to play that music. I want some time alone. I need to be able to take better care of myself in the way that we have done. But the self-compassion says that I deserve, I'm entitled, I know what those needs are, and I'm going to practice expressing them in a way that honors the other person, not in an aggressive way and not in a submissive way, but in a way that says I'm also important in order to be able to take advantage of the other things. So your question, Jean, you know, sometimes when I work with women, even very, very successful women, I find out of frustration, I have to say to them, for goodness sake, take care of your child's mother, or take care of your husband's wife, or take care of your colleague's colleague. Because when you say take care of you, yeah, fine, I will. So when you have that sense of entitlement and you know that it's also in others' benefit, because then you don't build up resentment, that's where it starts. So how do you do it? I think that you decide that you know, it's like put on your own oxygen in the airplane, however they say it, before you help children. Take care of yourself.
Yep.
Almost like you would a younger person that you love. Then you can look after your kids. Well, how do you take care of them? I think that you've got to be aware that you're going to see children who are not being able to express their anxiety but act their anxiety. So sometimes you see regressive behavior or unexpected behavior. You have to be more flexible about things like screen time. We have to be more adaptable of the environment and what's going on now. Things that perhaps weren't quite as acceptable before, you give a little leeway for. You don't come down on them about be a big boy or a big girl. You understand what they're going through. You also can model for your children that you don't have all the answers and that everybody is going through a challenging time. That's why we're all staying at home. And we're here to help each other. Yes, you do miss your friends. So it's to do with understanding and appreciation of the anxiety that they are going through. But you said children, and I think families. The biggest thing I think we've already said, reaching out, being available, not underestimating the power of support. It's really researched that, There's a wonderful book called Love and Survival, the scientific basis for the healing power of intimacy, that shows that if you have connection and love in your life, you actually get sick less often and get better more quickly. And so now is the time to really mobilize the power of that connection and show it in a way. So, and it doesn't always have to be what my kids would say, D&M, mom, meaning deep and meaningful. Doesn't always have to be just, how are you? What happened? How did you spend your day today? Those kind of caring conversations, as well as many of the other things that Dominique has already said.
What a perfect place to end. I want to thank each one of you, Dr. Dorianne, Cara, Weil, Dr. Dominique Lanctôt, and Dr. Patricia Elder for joining us here today. I also want to thank all of you IWF members who contributed great comments and also just some terrific questions. IWF will be doing more digital events, so keep an eye on your email. You'll be getting notifications of the events that are upcoming. And in the meantime, I hope all of you stay healthy, stay well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much.
Take care of yourself.